If your money's on mobility, this one's a pretty safe bet. Here's your look at the Mattel Master Universe Origins Nightstalker Evil Armored Battle Steed. This evil armored battle steed might be He-Man's nightmare, but our Nightstalker is a collector's dream come true. Combining vintage looks with 18 points of articulation and numerous battle accessories, our evil equine is ready to storm Castle Grayskull, strike terrifying poses, and take Origins figures along for the ride. They're gonna seriously tell me no one at Mattel ever thought to call this thing Nightmare? It literally is a reference to horses. Either way, though, before we get a closer look at the Nightstalker, the evil armored battle steed, we're going to grab the tape measure. And what we're going to do is we're going to measure this a couple of different ways. We're first going to measure from the tail to the front of its snout. Then we're going to measure it from the hooves to the top of the head. Based on that, let's start things first by spinning this around. We're going to, again, start where we started first with describing this. We're going to start at the tail, and we're going to work our way to the front of its snout. Nightmare. You're looking at Nightstalker, though, either way, being about 11 inches in length, and that translates to a vehicle, if you will, about 28 centimeters long. Then from its hooves to the top of its head, you're looking at it being about 8 inches in height, or about 20 centimeters tall. Now, Nightstalker wasn't a new idea for the Master Universe Origins line, no. In fact, back in the early 80s, it was simply just a recasting of the original Stridor, which is essentially what then Mattel has done for the Origins line. If you're looking at the two beasts, the two steeds, you can see that they're pretty much almost exactly the same. There has been a few different, obviously, color choices made from one to the other, some different sticker applications also as well, but even things like the heads seem almost exactly the same. It's just simply just a swap out of different colors. If you were in the know for the things that came packed along with Strider, then you'll be fairly familiar with the things now that come included with Nightstalker, as essentially the accessories are basically the exact same. There's some color obviously swapping out here, and then of course when it comes to the main display base, the display base very much is different than the one we got included with the previous horse. The one that we actually get here for Nightstalker does involve a little bit of assembly. This back fence area actually was already attached, so you didn't have to worry about that. But the slightly smaller, mossier version actually did require you having to take this out of the packaging, and this slots in place by two provided holes. It basically says that it's a one-time assembly. Some of these pieces I would question really wanting to remove these, just because, again, you may start to fracture the plastic. It does also require, in fact, adding the neck adjustment piece, which was, again, the exact same as we got with Strider. I just wanted to show you guys, though, the differences between the two bases. Obviously, one was treated more to look like Castle Grayskull. Obviously, the terrain here for Nightstalker looks very much more like resembling the terrain for Snake Mountain. But you can see, though, the differences between the two. Nightstalker does get afforded a much bigger display base than the one we got from Strider. The fences are a little bit different from one another. Also here as well, you can probably notice that I've removed the neck. Generally, when it came to displaying Strider next to Castle Grayskull, I usually just left this off, because I just thought it made a little bit more sense to dock the horse with that without having to worry about this getting in the way of things. I might probably do something very similar, but again, I don't know how often I would really want to remove these, just because, again, removing it and reattaching it, there's just this little thin layer of plastic keeping the tab piece in place. Constantly removing, I'm sure after a while will start to fracture this, and I'm sure if you're not too careful, you might end up ultimately breaking it. Still, though, I'm probably going to leave it off. It just means, unfortunately, it's going to be left behind a now hole here. I kind of wish, though, that they could have included, and I don't know if I had said this in the review of Strider, just a little rectangular piece of plastic. If you did want to leave this off, you're then not having to see an unsightly hole. You just take the rectangular piece of plastic, fit this over, and you basically get then a fairly, again, consistent looking terrain without having to worry about a big unsightly square there. I know it's a rectangle. This, by the way, though, is you just snap this in place. And the peg on the end does have some bit of swiveling. It's very hard of a ratchet joint. You then take the undercarriage of the horse. And I did notice, though, you had to put a fair bit of pressure, a fair bit of force on the horse in order to get this in place. Basically, just take it on top and then you snap it in place. And then you can get yourself the horse and just arch it back a little bit, bring back the hind legs, and then of course, you can get yourself Nightstalker to look like it's up on its hind legs. A nice way, granted, to be displaying it, but a lot of times, again, I just would probably have it on its fours rather than its twos. Just detaching this again, just I felt like I needed more force this time to do this than I had to worry about with Striders. Anyways, though, again, it's just going to plug into that, see the little hole right there, You probably could see the hole if I got my blasted finger out of the way. It's right there. See the hole right there. Just move the base out of the way. We'll get the horse back in its stance position. Bring its legs a little bit further forward. There we go. The other accessories that come included with this is you get these blast effects. Now, the blast effects are done here in red. To compare it, though, with the one that we got with the earlier horse, Strider's was blue. So you could really, if you wanted to, you could use the blue, but I think the red pops a lot nicer with the backdrop of the purple. They work the exact same way, and again, you get 3 of these. They don't really look like, honestly, that they are all that different from one another. I mean, again, you probably could look at this and nickel and dime the mold and think that they are all different, but I think there would make no sense, really, that Mattel would just cast 3 different molds. Why would they do that? That's extra this. They're not willing to spend extra this. Tiny little birds? No, that's not tiny little birds. But what you'll do, though, is that these cannons were something I already attached onto the horse. These basically just, there's a hole right here. You just take the more nubby end of the stub, little tab piece. The longer end is actually going to be serving more as a handle, although I never really use them as handles. And that basically just plugs in place. You'll do it on both sides, and by virtue of that, you get a little bit of poseability as well. But you'll just take these blast effects, and there's no real technical way to describe this. Literally, it's just you just ram it over top of the end of the nozzle. I think you probably could have found a much easier way, much more professional way of saying that. But basically, it's a softer bit of plastic, and you're just forcing it over the nozzle like that. And then, of course, there is one on the back here. This little turret does rotate back and forth. We'll talk more about that when it comes to the poseability end of things. Just move the tail out of the way. I don't know. I mean, that's pretty close to a tail. This thing is robotic, but I would imagine it probably doesn't like the idea of getting its tail blasted by fire. This, by the way, is a softer plastic, but, you get a little cannon there on the back. Let's remove those right now. Generally, when it came to also Strider, I never really had the figures displayed with these. I'm just going to put them back in the bag. Probably, in fact, the exact same bag that had all of Strider's extra accessories. Also gets itself some reins, and the reins are exactly the same. Not Roman reins, but you get the reins. These are ropes. It's one rope, basically, a continuous rope, and then you got the handles on the end of it. Like, though, with Striders, all you'll really do is you'll take the horse, open wide, and all you'll do then is take yourself... Is that the bridle? I think it's the reins. You just basically take the reins, you feed it into its mouth, and now really all you need is someone to sit inside the cockpit. There is also, again, the replacement. You want to look at those? Okay, we'll look at those before we bring in a figure. You get 2 variations of the helmet, and actually they're the exact same configurations, 2 different versions of the helmet that Strider also got as well. Strider's was red. Nightstalker's, of course, again, night, little hyphen, mare, nightmare. I'm sure that somebody must have tossed that idea around and just thought Nightstalker made more sense. The exact same mold. I wanted to see that there was a difference between the 2. I can't see a difference. Can you see a difference? Price is the difference. Anybody knows what that's from? You can let me know. I'm not saying it because I want to trick and test you guys. I honestly can't remember what that's from. What price is the difference? What's the difference? Price is the difference. Basically, you get this version of the piece that goes over top of its head, and then you got one that already basically starts with the horse. Just remove that right now. Actually, though, the original I want to say 1985 Nightstalker, I might be wrong by that date, had neither really one of these. In fact, I think the horse only just had the gold that was on the head, and then basically just added pieces, I think, came into play perhaps with the Master Universe Classics line. But again, you basically get 2 versions of them. One has the horn, one has just the regular piece. Though, to compare it, so I'm just going to slide this one over, and I'm going to bring back in... No, don't want to drop the pieces. I'm going to bring back in Strider. Strider for a whole while, and probably will continue to do this. I actually have this one with this piece, with this I don't know, again, what we call it, like a helmet. Is it a helmet? I would say so. I have it usually displayed with this. I suppose if I did want to differentiate them from one to the other, I probably would display maybe with Nightstalker either as you see right now, or probably displaying it with the horn, so that, again, there's even more differences between the 2. Whether you go with this one is completely up to you, but basically there's a hole on either side, and that just fits basically over top of its ears, just like that. Or again, if you wanted to, you can just pop this off. I know this is a simple tutorial how to replace a horse's helmet, and that basically just, you can do that one as well. But again, like this one I think is just too close to resembling Strider. I would rather instead just to have this displayed with, I think, the horn, the one that has the horn instead, just because it looks a little bit more different. Again, you got Strider, again you got Nightstalker, again essentially you've got the exact same mold from one to the other. Other than really just, again, like the color changes between the 2, so we'll just move this one again out of the way. Getting, though, a closer look at this, there's a whole lot of cool gold going on here. This is also gold plastic, and I think it's been a while. We can also talk about gold plastic syndrome. One thing that was really plaguing a lot of figures in like the late 90s to early 2000s, things that were made of gold plastic were known to getting brittle and snapping. Since then, I'm sure they have perfected gold plastic that I don't think you're going to have ever really those worries. And there's really, to be fair, nothing that's going to be moving around in this. This could also have really been painted. Again, looking at the way that the body is, yeah, it's probably been cast here in black plastic and in fact gone in there and painted gold, because obviously they're not going to take two halves and put them together. So you've got a black body, scratch that, black body, and then all the inner workings, all the main details on the front done in gold, or simply just painted in gold, not gold plastic. Sticker application there on the front, sticker applications here on the side, sticker applications also on the inside cockpit. And again, you don't want to get too close to that. Don't want to get too close to that. Of course, you got the back. The tail does have some poseability. We'll talk again more about the poseability more in a second. The thing we all really need, though, is the fact that we do have ourselves a steed. We need as well someone's going to sit inside the steed. Now, if you based it on a lot of the marketing really for Nightstalker back in the early 80s, I don't know why. They always seem to want to pick Jitsu as sort of the one that sits inside the horse. Jitsu, this just again happens to be the Origins version of Jitsu. I still don't know why my head on Jitsu is super loose. But anyways, if you want to stick sort of, I don't want to say to the canon, but more again to the marketing of Nightstalker, it always seemed to be the case that they want to put Jitsu inside. So we're just going to we don't want to fully bend the legs. We just want to have them a little bit more relaxed. And essentially what you'll do, there's real no rhyme or reason. It's just a case, there's the inside cavity of the horse, and you're just going to have to find something to fit inside of that. Doesn't sound right at all. Just take Jitsu, though, and we're just going to sit inside the horse and just, again, get him as far down as in there as you possibly can. Unfortunately, though, with Jitsu doesn't have gripping hands on both sides. He has, of course, the karate chopping hand. That's not the sound a karate chopping hand would make. So he really only has the means to hold the reins in one hand. Just plug that in place like that. And then again, for the other one, you can just kind of do what I did at the beginning of this review. You just sort of can, I don't know if you want to drape it around his hand. That just doesn't really look like he's holding on to much of anything. But that's the way generally, like in the 80s, they had a lot of times pictures depicting Nightstalker was usually with Jitsu. If you wanted to go instead, obviously, with this being Skeletor's steed, just happen to have myself here, Battle Armor Skeletor. We're just going to, again, take Jitsu out. Sorry, Jitsu, for what little time you spend on this channel. We're just going to bend Skeletor's legs. Just bend his knees just a little bit. You don't need to bend them super much. Just slide Skeletor inside. Want to, again, make sure that when you're fitting him inside, you want to kind of just bend the knees. You don't really want to have them straight. You don't want to have them fully bent. You kind of want to meet somewhere in the middle. And then once those are met in the middle, yeah, you just take Skeletor, fit him inside. Skeletor is really going to still face the same problem as Jitsu. He doesn't have one big giant karate chopping hand, but he does have a monster hand. So there, again, really isn't a way for him to properly hold the reins that way. So we'll just take one of the reins, this time on the opposite side, plug on one side, and then we'll just take the other one and just kind of, I don't know, yeah, kind of have it like that. Or really two. There's also a loop right here, and that can also fit as well around monster hands like that. So really, Skeletor almost even looks like he's gone working out of the gym. But again, that's what it would look like, obviously, with a Motu figure sitting inside the horse. Now for the figure's articulation, or the vehicle's articulation, if you want to consider the horse that. Let's also as well remove the reins. Just take that off right now. Wilbur, just put it off to the side. For the articulation on the horse, it's basically going to be the exact same as Strider. So again, if you're familiar with Strider, you can be familiar with Nightstalker. The side cannons do move. Would you consider that articulation? I would consider that poseability. The poseability on the pony, far being from a pony, there's a ball joint essentially right here, so the head right away can move back and forth. There is also as one here, you can swivel back and forth, but this isn't going to really move up and down all that much. So the collar piece that's closest to the body is the part that's going to swivel back and forth. Then you have this part that's going to move back and forth. You're going to have as well the head that's also going to move up, down, back and forth. I suppose as well you could count the mouth. The mouth does open and close. There's no teeth, there's no tongue, there's nothing inside other than just the means to hold the reins. But that does have some poseability there as well. For the back of the tail does move back and forth. There's also as well the turret. That does rotate. The legs themselves are on ratchet joints, and they're really tight. They've always really been tight with Strider. They continue to be tight here with Nightstalker. They click, clickety-click, barb a trick, clickety-clack. Is it clickety-clack, barb a back? Anyways, nobody gets that reference. You can move it back and forth like that. There's also as well poseability here at play in the, I guess, the knee area of the horse, and there's articulation here as well for the hooves. That's ×4. So 1, 2, 3, and 4 all continue over the same levels of poseability. So all in all, like, again, it's just a casting really of the original Strider, but anyone that really was in the know, I was in the know, who had maybe the original Strider as a kid, or who had benefited, maybe not having as a kid, but as an adult with some disposable tiny little birds. No, not tiny little birds. Those that had maybe the money now to pick up Strider knew eventually, sooner rather than later, Mattel would then probably just use the mold again, and we got ourselves Nightstalker. And that's essentially what they've done. Nightstalker right now is available over on Mattel's site, and most of the time, usually when I've looked at reviews like this, I always tend to be the bearer of the bad news and say that, yeah, if you guys are interested, long since sold out. I don't happen to have the chance to say that because I think Nightstalker is still currently available over on Mattel's site for around $50. I think it's in fact $50 Canadian. It's going to be a little bit less in US prices. But again, if you were a big fan or just familiar with the horse, obviously from like the early 80s, Nightstalker, again, just basically just the bad guy version of the original good guy's horse. But again, a nice welcomed addition to your Master Universe collection. Some of you may not know this, but Skeletor has had Nightstalker ever since it was a pony. Aw. Sad to say, though, that the steed was always sick and known for coughing. As a boy, Skeletor was worried that his Nightstalker was going to die, so he took it to the Eternian doctor, and he said, "Doctor, doctor, my pony Nightstalker won't stop coughing. Is he going to die?" Well, the doctor looked at the little boy, then looked at Nightstalker and said, "No, your pony isn't going to die. It's just a little horse." That's a little bit of Master Universe horse humor for you. Back, though, to the rotating rotisserie. As you can see, I've got Battle Armor Skeletor sitting inside the cavity of the horse. That's a bit disturbing, even really when you think about it. I understand the fact that this is a mechanical horse, but just the idea that the character's sitting inside of it, like you just sliced open a warm tauntaun. Could you imagine if He-Man sat inside the cavity of Battle Cat? Okay, we just can move away from that. Strider that had something very similar, that you have the adjustable neck that can plug into the undercarriage of the horse. Though, like Strider, I'm not likely going to be displaying the horse upright like this. I like that Mattel included this option, but like those Strider, I kind of like the idea that it's parked alongside Castle Grayskull like it's just a parked car. Somebody just waits to go out, boop, boop. You have to unarm the horse, of course. And then, of course, the horse is on its merry little way. Probably going to be in something similar, although, unfortunately, unlike Castle Grayskull that's set up right now in my collection room, my Snake Mountain is right now relegated inside of its box. The only reason why I haven't put together Snake Mountain yet is just I'm looking at, again, the lay of the land. I don't even know where I'm going to be putting this thing. Eventually, when I do put it together, like Strider, I think Nightstalker is just going to be parked alongside Snake Mountain. The figure is nicely displayed, the figure is nicely detailed, and the figure is decently posable. But if you go back to the original, 1985 release of Nightstalker, which again was just a remolding essentially of Strider, it didn't really have as much posability at play. One thing it didn't also have was the two different replaceable helmets. The original one would have just had the gold and the black for the face, so that's one thing I think was introduced with the Matty Collector version of Strider, and has sort of been the ever since, just a pattern ever since for all the future releases. I think, though, with Strider not having the helmet that has the horn on the end of it, just to differentiate one from the other, I think I'm probably going to display, though, with Nightstalker, the helmet that has the horn, just so one looks even more different from the other. The blasters are very similar. In fact, they're the exact same mold. The body is the same mold, and even has the same matching blast effects, even though this one done in casting of red. The original Strider would have been done in blue. What do you guys, though, think of Nightstalker? Did you originally have the first release of Nightstalker way back in the 80s? Or is this one that you've now picked up either with the Matty Collector release or now that we're getting with the Origins line? Overlooking horrible bad dad jokes aside, if you guys did enjoy this video, I want to throw it a like. Why not? You're not doing anything else, I'd like to think. And of course, if you guys did want to stick around for more, hit that subscribe, turn on the bell, come back, please. As always, guys, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.